Hello everyone, my name is Mustapha.mohsen, as you may or may not know, and thank you for clicking on this video. So, I hope everyone is doing okay, and I hope everyone is having a great day, great week, wherever you are. I am doing relatively okay. I have had a pretty decent week, to say the least. Like you guys know, if you have watched my previous videos, I am currently in my exam period and reaching the end of my exams for this, like the end of this semester. And I only have one exam left, which is in 2 days, but technically it's Saturday, but we just passed midnight, so it's Sunday, and I have an exam on Monday in the afternoon, so that will be exciting. But yeah, so what I wanted to talk about today, without getting too much off topic, was I think if you guys have watched my previous videos in general, you guys know by now that I really struggle with accepting things being the way they are, and just simply accepting reality at that. And I think I've mentioned this also in a lot of videos. It's the fact that when your brain has gone through so many like traumatic events and really difficult things in general to deal with, most of the time it will be like the first thing that your brain will do when you're in a situation where you don't really know what's going on, or you kind of need to fill in the blanks yourself, and your brain has already kind of gotten used to a certain like pattern, that it has gotten used to because it appeared so much in your childhood and everything that you've been through. After a while, if you get used to people leaving you, you will start to recognize those patterns, and it will start to kind of take a toll on your mental health, because in a way you already kind of have a preview of how this situation that you're in, or the relationship that you have with someone, it will really kind of like, of course, like I said, you will already fill in the blank. So when you notice thus patterns that you've noticed, of course, because of trauma, you will fill them in, which most of the time you will directly jump to these really bad conclusions. And I've gone through this myself. Like I said, you guys, I have borderline personality disorder, and something that I am really bad with is the abandonment of it all. So I struggle with real bad abandonment issues, and these issues also, of course, come like from the fact that when I like from childhood trauma, we'll just say that, and you will have this fear that because certain people or certain individuals that were supposed to be there, they kind of left you, or you kind of felt betrayed by them. And after a while, when these things happen, it will be the first things that you will notice. For example, when you are in a relationship, instead of focusing on the good sides and focusing on everything that you guys are experiencing and how you guys feel towards each other, and how you guys are, everything that you guys are experiencing. But after a while, if you've gone through so many difficult events, and your brain kind of has gotten used to most of the time everything having a bad outcome, it will also kind of fill in the blanks with these bad outcomes that it knows, and it's really difficult to kind of leave that way of thinking behind, because I think generally people with borderline are more prone to having this mindset that because they've gotten used to things, because things have happened in the past, because someone left them and they were supposed to be there for them like their whole entire life, and they left them, they have a feeling that everyone that they meet will leave them. But not only that, once they get attached, it's like you are in this type of headspace, you love them so much and you care for them so deeply, and everything is going well and good, and you start getting attached, and you kind of start losing yourself into them, because you will start to get attached of the things that you missed in your childhood, the things that you kind of always wanted, and that way you will get really attached, and after a while that attachment will get so toxic to the point that you will kind of self-destruct, and not only that but self-sabotage. And the self-sabotaging of it all is not only because like you're doing it out of like will, like your own will. Like, no, that's not how it happens. Self-sabotaging, it's because it's like you have this feeling of you don't deserve it, or you kind of have gotten used to everyone leaving you, or you've gotten used to experiencing so many traumatic events after each other. You will kind of notice patterns, and I'm not saying that those patterns are fully like a delusional or like a hallucination in a sense. No, it's definitely not, because it's one thing that I'm good at. It's not actually noticing the signs. So over the years, I have had many quote unquote FPs. That's what we kind of refer to them in borderline personality disorder, which are favorite person, like a favorite person. And most of the time, someone who has a favorite person, they get attached to a point that, of course, like I said, it most of the time it is a specific figure or a person that, you know, they kind of lacked in a person, or they lacked in, not like specific traits, for example, that they lacked in a person that like they needed the most, you know, growing up, for example, like a caring like a caring personality, or a giving, or like a protective one, you know. Because, for example, something that I struggle with myself is that because I had always had the feeling that I had to deal with things by myself, because I always had a feeling that everyone around me wasn't able to understand me. I kind of always blocked that out. So that way I actually kind of self-sabotaged in a way that every time someone would come closer to me and actually try and understand how I'm feeling, I would actually think that they're going to use that against me, just, you know, as if the whole universe is against me. Knock on wood, babe. Because I'm not. We don't want that. I don't want no universe against me, babe. We love you. You're with me. I'm here, mother. Like, we're not doing that. But, so yeah, like, that's the thing. It's basically how, I kind of digressed there. I'm forgetting what I was talking about, but it's fine. So to continue on, so, you know, about the FP. So, you know, you kind of get attached to these traits that you missed growing up. And most of the time, you will create such a vision of them, and create such a romanticized vision. Like, you will actually look through all of the red flags and all of the bad signs and all of the bad things that that person does, and blame yourself for it, instead of just acknowledging that that person is actually doing bad things to you. But because you're so attached, it's so difficult for you to kind of you know, leave them. Of course, like for me personally, when I'm attached, it's almost like cognitive dissonance. Like, it's at the point that instead of accepting that they're not good for me, I will try and say that, instead of accepting that I know for a fact that they're not good for me, I will say, no, I did something bad, and because of that, it caused them to act in a certain way and hurt me, and act that way, which eventually also inevitably would hurt me. And that's the thing. So I hope you guys noticed by now that these hypothetical situations, of course, are things that I've generally been through, and these are things that I've experienced my whole entire life, and I've had a like a fair share amount of traumatic experiences. Because I think it's also important to acknowledge that traumatic experiences are, of course, not fun, obviously, but they do have, sometimes they kind of can give you a false type of survival instinct. Like, for example, what I want to, like, when I'm talking about this whole entire video is, you know, filling in the blanks. You know, your brain, it's really like, once you get used to bad things happening, the best way for your brain to kind of accept something or give it closure, it will fill in the gaps with the information that it has. So trauma, for example, or bad events that you've been through. And for example, that's the thing for when it's, I know it's really funny or like ironic thing, but I know it's something also, I think, because of the of how in a digitalized world we live in, and how everything is on computers and on phones and everything, you know. So I think also the whole concept of of relationships and attachment has really gone different. And that's something that I've really struggled with. It's because once I started to get to know someone, like these days, when you want to get to know someone or when you're getting to know someone, most of the time it starts off with, getting to know them online. I think I'm pretty sure that most of the people that are in relationships, I mean, I'm not sure that all of them are, but I'm pretty sure that because of the rise, like the uprise of dating sites and the uprise of, everything happening online, like so many things happen online, so like everyone is on social media. So most of the time you will get to know someone online. And the thing with that is that, for example, me, the bad attachment that I had were not online. The attachment that I had were started from a real life experiences and like real life things, like I got to know, like I saw someone and I actually saw, like literally saw, not only did I visualize, but I actually saw that person. I was like, okay, you are exactly the thing that I've always wanted, always needed. And my brain would go like, yeah, they will fix my borderline personalities, where like, oh, suddenly I don't have borderline, or suddenly I'm feeling better. And that was the thing with, when I got to see someone in real life, and that's how like the bond or the relationship or whatever you want to call it starts. I already have a vision of someone, so that way I wouldn't have to struggle with the idea of when I don't know something about someone, or when I'm getting to know someone and I don't know why, for example, they're not answering, or I don't know that. I had already seen them in real life, so you would already kind of catch on to why they are. So, like for example, if you get to see someone at the library, for example, at a certain time, and you've seen them every day at that time, you will get used to the fact that every time, like every day at 7 o'clock, for example, they will be there. So you will expect them to be there at that time, But with everything going on your phone, you don't really have a certainty of they will be there, for example, And the idea of simply sending a message and getting a reply or not getting a reply was always so. That was the thing. That was for me the most difficult part with the attachment back then. It was when, like I said, it started all in real life. Like everything were real life scenarios, like I got to know someone and eventually I would get attached because of, the vision. Like that's something with me, is that once I meet someone, I will directly know. And it's also because of that, the filling in the gaps thing, because of that, I will know that, oh, they are going to mean a lot to me, or they are not going to mean anything to me, and I can leave past that, and can just like keep it on the, not the DL, that's not what I'm going to say, but I can keep it on, what's it called? I can keep it on, like surface level, like I will just keep it there, like, yeah, okay, so that's that. But for me, I've always gotten attached to the like, it's so funny. It's like a copy paste of a person, and because of certain traits, trait. I'm talking about traits, So I've always kind of noticed that. So it's always the same type of person, and you would think that, like I said, when you don't know information, you will fill in the gaps. So you will know that if you recognize a certain behavior in a person, and you know that that is a behavior that you've noticed in someone that you've gotten attached to in the past, and it's like exactly the same thing, for a fact that it will end in a bad way and inevitably it will hurt you. Like that's the outcome of it all. You know that for a fact. But why did I, for example, not why did I, for example, not leave, or why did I, for example, not realize those signs and actually just kind of move on? It's because once I start to notice that, it's too late. It's too late. It's way too late. That's the problem. That's the whole problem. The moment that I actually start realizing that I'm attached is when I start thinking of the fact that, what if I get attached? Or when I start noticing myself questioning things and having to fill in the gaps by myself, and it inevitably causing me to self-sabotage. Why? Because, for example, like I said, it all starts off with, having a nice interaction, and you feel like everything is like in the flow, and after a while you will expect that the conversation that you're having is going to go on, like you want another conversation, of course. But a misconception that I had my whole entire life, and I didn't actually like I thought that wasn't really the case with anything really, was that when meeting someone and actually hitting it off, it doesn't mean that you guys are actually going to become really good friends, or that you guys are going to have a really good friendship or even a bond or a relationship or whatever afterwards, you know? I've noticed that it's like some people just come into your life to have like a good proper conversation and leave. And it would be kind of weird or absurd to say that simply having one conversation with them and just like leave, like and that day and simply getting attached to them. I mean, that's a problem. It's that normally, you know, you once, like, the thing is, like I said, you fill in the gaps, okay? So once you start to get to know someone and they give you kind of a lot of information about themselves, you will kind of be able to connect who they are as a person. Or once you notice how they're acting towards you, or like their body language, you will actually notice that how they're acting is probably going to be the way that they're going to act if you guys go further on to a relationship or you guys become friends, you know? And that's a good thing of it all, because once you kind of have, like, once you're able to kind of fill in those gaps, you will be kind of able to define or like determine for yourself whether you want to continue on with whatever you're going on, like whatever you're having, like whatever you have here, like whatever this thing that you're having with someone is, whatever that is. But at the same time, when you notice a trait that you have needed and that you've seeked your whole entire life, for example, a protective feeling, or someone who can give you advice, or someone that can have, like, give you this, like, has the same shared interest that you felt as if when growing up, or you always felt misunderstood on, you know, someone that understood you, someone that was, I'm not gonna go too much into detail about what exactly that gets me attached to others, but, you know, that's kind of the thing. So you will kind of be able to determine whether you want to get attached, whether you want to kind of, I mean, no, not get it. You want to get attached? No, because I don't choose to get attached, babes. We don't do that here. I don't choose it, nor do I want it. I don't want it. Trust me. Double it and give it to the... Actually, no, don't double it, because they don't want it either. Like, no. Attachment, ooh. Literally. I hate when people say, like, I wouldn't wish that upon my worst enemy. Actually, I would. Like, I really would. Like, I really would. Go get attached. Like, go get attached, girl. Like, really, like, if you hurt me, like, these people that I have in mind right now that traumatized me, please, for the love of God, step in the foot, or like step in the shoes of someone who has borderline personality, sort of get attached to someone that you like, to someone because of a trait or because of a vision that you have created in your head of them, and deal with that, please, 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 please. I wouldn't wish it upon my worst enemy, but I low-key would. I mean, high-key I would. But anyways, I'm digressing here. Anyways. Do I even use that word correctly? I think I do. But I digress. I don't know. I like saying it. Anyways, it doesn't matter. It's so hot here, you guys. It's so hot. It's like literally 30 degrees outside, and it's literally past midnight. But anyways, so I'm not going to go too much off of detail. So, yeah. So like I said, when getting to know someone, you will either decide for yourself, well, look, I'm going to stop this here, because of course you will know, like, I'm not saying that it's not, like, the thing is, look, I'm going to say this about attachment. I said before that you can't really choose to get attached. Well, the first thing is that what I've noticed with myself and the person that, like, the people that I have gotten attached to, is that I've always known that I should have left, but I gave it kind of a chance. You know, I was like, yeah, maybe they're going to be better. Or maybe, yeah, I'm sweating. Maybe they're going to be better. Or maybe they're going to be, you know, it's mostly like I get attached to the possibility of what we can become. So I will literally have no self-respect. And instead of that, like, at that moment, I will forget filling in the gaps. Because that's when I would start filling in the gaps with hopium. I would literally fill it in with hopium, because I would say, like, what we could have been or what we can be is such an amazing view. So instead of filling in the gaps, I will fill in the gaps with, like, overly positive, overly delusional things. And most of the time that will end badly, because I will be in such a a headspace of a with a romanticized version of them, that it will most likely trigger a what is it called, a split. And a split is mostly when, you know, they kind of, I mean, I'm not going to go too much into detail about that. I would like to have another episode about that, of course. But that will mostly cause me to split. And I've noticed that, to give you a little information about what splitting is. So splitting in borderline is like kind of having a full-on 180 moment on someone. So for example, you were like, for example, I can give you that. I was, for example, really attached to this person, and I was fully like when you're attached to someone, you're like in this euphoric headspace. Like you have no idea of like your surroundings. You're only focused on them. Like your whole entire life is like based on them. Your whole entire future is like based on them, what they think of me, what they think of me. Like, what if they leave me, what if they leave me? You're always on edge. You're always walking on eggshells because you don't want them to leave you, eventually causing them to leave you, because once you kind of manifest them to expecting them to leave, you will kind of self-sabotage to the point that they will eventually leave because of the way that you were acting, because like you were kind of overly protective, or like overly questionative of, or like overthinking or whatever. So that's that. So that's splitting. And most of the time, the splitting part is like once they kind of trigger something. Like it can be a small thing that they say, you know, it can be just simply saying something, or like misunderstanding you, or like giving you kind of this glimpse of how they think of you. And that most of the time is like that's when kind of the gaps that you had filled in the beginning, once getting to know them, because of information that you actually did not want to accept, or like once, like for example, they don't answer your phone, so they're like, oh my god, they hate me, they're gonna leave me. That's the moment where you realize that, oh my god, so the whole entire, that's when, like when splitting, that's where you have like, oh my god, so the whole entire time I was filling in these gaps with information because I was scared for them to leave, while I was actually the one who should have left in the beginning. And I will realize like, oh my god, so I have been doing all of this, and I've been filling in all of these gaps with this much of information because of the things that I've been through. And I try to, you know, it will get you to the point where, oh my god, I have actually been trying to fill in, like I've filled in these gaps to the point that I actually convinced myself that the gaps that I had filled in were true. You know, that's the thing, specifically because you got used to things. Because like I said, when there are like small little bumps in the road, and you don't really have any closure on these bumps, what you will do most of the time is kind of fill in those bumps with information that you already have, you know? For example, if somebody doesn't answer your phone, and in the past somebody didn't answer their phone, and they've never like, and afterwards they never responded to you anymore, and they kind of ghosted you, you will kind of start thinking of that. So like, oh my god, that's what happened the last time that I talked to someone. So what if I said something wrong, causing them to not answer my phone, and eventually causing them to leave? So you will start filling in those gaps, but at the same time, they will, for example, give you the reassurance of, oh yeah, no, I was just working. Okay, so you got that reassurance, but at the same time, the reassurance will never be enough to actually properly fill in those gaps. And every time, it will inevitably cause you to ask for more reassurance, to the point that you start self-sabotaging, because why? They won't, at a certain point, they will not be able to fulfill they will not be able to fulfill that reassurance, you know, once they have given you a certain amount of reassurance to fill in those gaps that you've, you know, kind of created, or replace the gaps that you have created. No, replace the gaps that you had filled in with information that you already had, and now actually fill them in with the correct information. It will start to feel uncomfortable. Why? Because don't you you don't believe it. You don't believe it, you know? Because at the same time, you filled it in with information of, okay, they're going to leave me, so now I have to now I have to kind of reorganize my whole entire life and start it from the beginning to kind of deal with them leaving me, so I don't lose myself, which inevitably you will lose yourself. I think actually, you guys, count how many times I said inevitably, and count how many times I've played with my bangs. Anyways. So yeah, this was a chaotic, but anyways, I'm going to continue about this before I. So at a certain point, filling in the gaps will never be enough. So you will, when filling in those gaps, after a while, you had filled those gaps, whatever, girl. We filled them up, but after a while, they will what is it called? They will get like they will expire. Those gaps will expire. That's a perfect analogy to make. They will expire. They're like not enough. So you need to like re-nourish them. You have to give them more nourishment. You have to make them proper. And the only actual thing that will stay kind of hard and actually be there and not leave, talking about a gap being filled, is, for example, a bad thing experience, like that you've experienced, and you filled that gap with the information, like the bad information, because you don't trust that person enough to actually believe that whatever they said is actually worthy of filling in that gap of the whole situation that you guys have going on. But at the same time, the gap that is being filled, you were searching for it, for them to fill it in. But then still, it's not enough. Why? Because you don't believe it. Why? Because you've gone through so much trauma. You've gone through so much times where people actually left you when they gave you that reassurance that it will never be enough. So after a while, you will start to notice that those traits, and you were like, why am I'm like, I will be always on edge, That's the thing. I've promised this to myself. I will never get attached to anyone again. I have confused limerence with actual love so many times, and I will also have another video about that, the difference between limerence and love. I've gone through limerence so many times. It was horrible. I gotten attached in bad ways, which were not love. I confused attachment with love so many times, and eventually causing me to confuse ABUSE with love. Because why? Because I filled in those gaps. I have gotten used to bad things happening to me, so I confused that with love, Initially, the things that I've gone through in the past, I confused them with love because I kind of got exposed to that at a young age. So eventually, you will kind of get used to that. You will get used to bad things happening, and eventually, inevitably, you will fill in the gaps that you don't have on certain events, on certain people, with bad things about yourself. If they do something wrong, the first thing that it will go through, I did something bad to cause them to do something that bad towards me. They left, I did something to cause them to leave. Well, the event where they left me, I didn't do anything. I wasn't even able to talk. I wasn't even able to think properly. Anyways. So I was talking about that. I hope you guys have a good restful day, night, sleep, whatever, everywhere, anything, everywhere, everything, everywhere. Mustapha out, you guys. Mwah.